The case of the killer who vanished before CCTV. The case of the killer who vanished before CCTV is one of the most mysterious and shocking criminal cases, capturing the attention of not only law enforcement but also the public. It is regarded as one of the most remarkable investigations in criminal history, as the perpetrator seemingly managed to evade every security camera, making it extremely difficult for investigators to determine the killer's identity or motive. Filled with unexpected twists and complex developments, the case left behind numerous unanswered questions and became the subject of endless speculation. Was the killer a master at covering their tracks, or was it simply a stroke of extraordinary luck? Join us as we uncover the details of this chilling case in search of the truth. Ironically, the suspect was a medical worker, a person whose duty was to save lives, yet capable of committing an exceptionally brutal crime. On September 30, 2003, the police received an emergency call from a distressed man asking for help. Struggling to contain his panic, he told the operator that his wife had collapsed and was no longer responding. Officers were dispatched immediately, along with emergency medical personnel. The incident occurred at number 102 Belcher Street, Kennedytown, in a luxury residential building. The apartment where the tragedy took place was located on the 19th floor. When police officers and paramedics arrived, they found the victim's husband waiting anxiously outside the apartment. As soon as he saw the police and ambulance arrive, the husband led them directly to his wife. Inside the bedroom lay a middle-aged woman on the bed. She was dressed in a t-shirt and shorts, with a scarf tightly wrapped around her neck. She showed no signs of life. Despite the grim situation, the paramedics immediately began emergency resuscitation efforts, doing everything they could to revive her. Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, they were unable to save her, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Afterward, the victim was rushed to the nearby Queen Mary Hospital for emergency treatment. Tragically, she was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. The attending emergency physician officially confirmed her time of death as 10:08 a.m. that same day. The victim was Lu Zhaoxian, a 43-year-old woman. She worked as a secretary at a publishing company and was a devoted Buddhist. She had been married to her husband for 18 years, and together they had 2 children, a 17-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. The apartment where the murder took place was their family home, where the family of 4 had been living for several years. Based on her background, Lu appeared to be an ordinary middle-aged woman, a devoted wife and mother living a quiet life. So why was she murdered so brutally and without any apparent motive? Had she unknowingly crossed paths with someone dangerous? According to her husband, he had a long-standing habit of going for an early morning run. Whenever he did not have to work, or was scheduled for an afternoon shift, he would follow the same routine. On the morning of the murder, he woke up at around 7 a.m. and left the apartment for his run at approximately 7:15 a.m. After finishing his jog around 7:30 a.m., he stopped to buy breakfast for his wife before heading home. On the morning of the murder, about 15 minutes into his run, Lu Zhaoxian's husband called his wife to ask what she wanted for breakfast. Strangely, the phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. He found this unusual, as his wife almost always picked up his calls. Even so, he didn't think too much of it and continued his morning run. At around 9:30 a.m., roughly an hour later, he returned home and was surprised to find that the front door had been left unlocked. Immediately sensing that something was wrong, he cautiously entered the apartment. As he walked inside, he noticed that the bedroom door was open. Entering the room, he found his wife lying face down on the bed. He called out to her several times, but there was no response. When he turned her over, he saw foam around her mouth, and her underwear had been partially exposed. He quickly checked for a pulse but found no signs of life. Believing that his wife had been murdered, he immediately called the police. He also noticed that every drawer in the bedroom had been pulled open. Approximately 6,000 Hong Kong dollars in cash, along with a gold necklace and a gold ring, were missing. Beyond the apparent robbery, however, one detail struck him as particularly unusual. The couple had a simple daily routine. Whoever left the apartment first would take the trash downstairs and dispose of it using the rear staircase. On that morning, he had been the first to leave, but he had forgotten to take out the trash. Yet when he returned home, the garbage had already been thrown away. This led him to believe that the killer may have been waiting nearby. When his wife stepped outside to dispose of the trash, the assailant could have followed her back into the apartment before carrying out the murder. Their 2 children had both left for school at around 6:30 a.m. The younger son later told investigators that before leaving, he had opened the door to his parents' bedroom and saw them both asleep. Not wanting to disturb them, he quietly closed the door and went to school. Based on the statements from Lu Zhaoxian's husband and children, investigators concluded that she was most likely killed after her husband left for his morning run. The evidence also suggested that the perpetrator was highly familiar with the family's daily routine. The killer appeared to know not only when the children left for school, but also that Lou's husband regularly went jogging in the morning, indicating that the crime may have been carefully planned in advance. First, why did a man with 15 years of experience as a paramedic fail to provide immediate first aid to his own wife? Second, after calling the police, Liang Wingxing did not behave like an experienced emergency medical professional. Normally, as a husband, he should have stayed by his wife's side and attempted to help her. However, instead, he was waiting outside the apartment for the police and ambulance to arrive. When officers reached the scene, he simply cooperated with them, helped provide information about the incident, and reported the missing valuables. These unusual and seemingly unreasonable actions caused investigators to suspect that Liang Wingxing might have been involved in the crime. However, at that stage, the police only had suspicions and could not take action without solid evidence. It was not until they received the official autopsy report that they became more confident that their theory might be correct. Besides the contradiction regarding the time of death, the autopsy report revealed another important detail: Lu Zhaoxian had taken sleeping pills before her death. However, when reporting the incident to police, Liang Wingxing never mentioned this information. When investigators looked deeper into the family's financial situation, they discovered that the couple had purchased life insurance policies in 1996. The policies were worth $90,000 and 500,000 Hong Kong dollars. Of course, buying life insurance is a personal choice, and there is nothing unusual about wanting to protect yourself and your family financially. However, police found that Liang Wingxing had contacted the insurance agent shortly before the murder occurred. Even more suspiciously, after his wife died, he stood outside the emergency room and called the insurance agent to explain her death. Would an ordinary husband, immediately after losing his wife, think first about handling insurance matters? Furthermore, the couple had been married for nearly 20 years, and there appeared to be no obvious signs of serious conflict between them. When police reviewed security footage and building access records, they also found no suspicious outsiders entering or leaving the building. This made the situation even more unusual, suggesting that the murderer could have been someone already living inside the building. All of these clues pointed toward one conclusion: the strongest suspect was the victim's own husband, Liang Wingxing. Strangely, although he had been cooperative and actively assisted police when reporting the crime, he completely changed his attitude after being arrested. He refused to cooperate with investigators and remained silent throughout questioning. Of course, exercising the right to remain silent is legal, and the evidence against him at that point was still only based on police suspicions. 48 hours after Liang Wingxing's arrest, on October 2, police allowed him to leave on bail and return to the station for further questioning if necessary. A week after leaving the police station, a large number of reporters gathered outside the entrance waiting to interview him. Liang Wingxing appeared angry because everyone believed he was the murderer. However, because police had no concrete evidence to charge him, they had no choice but to release him. Liang Wingxing stated that he was under enormous pressure and did not want to comment further on the case. Although Liang Wingxing was extremely confident that he was innocent, he had no idea that two key witnesses had voluntarily gone to the police to reveal more details about the case. Their statements made investigators even more convinced that Liang Wingxing was the person responsible for the crime. On the night of October 2, Liang Wingxing's children went to the police station themselves to provide additional information. The first was his younger son. The boy told police that at around 6:30 a.m. on the day of the murder, he had entered his parents' bedroom to check on his mother because he knew she had been suffering from arm pain for nearly 2 weeks. She had previously visited the hospital for treatment and had been prescribed several types of medication. The night before the murder, his mother had complained about pain in her arm and needed to take medicine. That was the reason the boy entered his parents' room the next morning, to make sure she was okay. Before leaving for school, he thought his mother was simply sleeping. However, after the incident occurred, he became unsure whether she was actually asleep because she was lying on her side with her face turned inward. The lower half of her body was covered by a blanket, so he could not see whether she was moving or not. Liang Wingxing's daughter also provided important information. She said that on the night of September 29, she was doing her homework in the living room as usual. At around 10 p.m., her mother complained that her arm was hurting and said she needed to take medicine. At that moment, Liang Wingxing told his wife that the medicine she had been taking was not effective and gave her another type of medication instead. After Lu Zhaoxian took the medicine and sat on the sofa watching television, she soon began to feel extremely dizzy. Not long afterward, she went into the bedroom. Shortly after that, Liang Wingxing also entered the bedroom. These details perfectly matched the autopsy report, which confirmed that Lu Zhaoxian had taken sleeping pills before her death. Based on these suspicious findings, police developed their initial theory: Liang Wingxing had purchased a large life insurance policy for his wife in advance. Then, using his experience as a paramedic and the trust of a husband caring for his wife, he allegedly persuaded Lu Zhaoxian to take sleeping pills. Once the medication took effect, he could easily carry out the murder. Afterward, Liang Wingxing allegedly took advantage of the time when his children had left for school to stage the scene as a robbery gone wrong, making it appear as though an intruder had broken in and killed his wife. But why would a man who had lived with his wife for nearly 20 years want to take her life for insurance money? What was his real motive? Was there a deeper secret hidden behind this case? The answers to these questions were unexpectedly revealed through a letter 1 week after the incident, on October 7. Coincidentally, that day was Lu Zhaoxian's birthday. On the very day she should have been celebrating, the investigation finally reached a major breakthrough. Police and Lu's family discovered a crucial clue that could explain the reason behind her death. As mentioned earlier, Lu Zhaoxian was not a housewife. She worked as a secretary at a publishing company. Several days after her death, her personal belongings were organized so that her family could collect them. When Lu's younger sister came to retrieve her belongings, she unexpectedly discovered a letter written by a man named Qi. The letter was dated November 14, 2002, and its contents expressed affection and jealousy toward a woman named Qi. Although the letter did not include a full signature, Lu's sister immediately recognized the handwriting. She realized that the handwriting belonged to her brother-in-law, Liang Wingxing. It turned out that Lu Zhaoxian's sister had not only lost her loved one to a cruel husband, but also discovered that he had been unfaithful throughout their marriage. The letter was later handed over to the police. After examining its contents, investigators noticed an important detail: the reason behind the breakup between Liang Wingxing and Qi was supposedly related to money. After further investigation, police discovered that Lu Zhaoxian had actually known about her husband's affair. However, in order to preserve her family and maintain their marriage, she chose to forgive him and pretend that nothing had happened. Investigators also uncovered another shocking detail. After his wife's death, Liang Wingxing had not only contacted the insurance agent but had also called Qi. This proved that their relationship had never truly ended, despite his claims. However, in order to build a stronger case, police continued collecting evidence to officially prosecute Liang Wingxing. 7 months after the murder, on April 17, 2004, Lu Zhaoxian's sister and sister-in-law happened to encounter Liang Wingxing and Qi walking together in a public square. When he noticed them, Liang Wingxing was holding hands with Qi, but the two immediately separated. After witnessing this scene, Lu's sister reported it to the police. Officers quickly arrived at Liang Wingxing's residence and discovered that Qi was also there. Nearly 1 year after the murder, on September 20, 2004, police believed they had gathered enough evidence to proceed with charges. Liang Wingxing was officially arrested and accused of murdering his wife. On September 6, 2006, the case was brought before the High Court. Liang Wingxing was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. This case was not only a shocking crime story but also a reminder of the complexity and cruelty that can exist within human relationships. Although the details of the case seemed like something from a suspenseful crime novel, it was a real tragedy involving irreversible pain and loss. Finding the murderer and uncovering the motive behind the crime was not only an answer to the many unanswered questions but also a warning about the hidden darkness that can exist behind seemingly peaceful relationships. This case will forever remain one of the unforgettable chapters in the history of true crime. See you all for the next cases. Please like and subscribe to my channel to support me.